Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, episode 102.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 102 of the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast. Show notes page for today's episode is outoforderjameskalita.com/102. And today's sponsor is giftforgunnuts.com. Gift for Gun Nuts, where you get hunting and shooting gift ideas for the hunting and shooting sports enthusiast on your holiday list every day from now until Christmas. Head over to giftforgunnuts.com and check them out. And please remember that you can visit venison.kitchen from now until October 31st and get that free 150 venison recipe ebook when you purchase Haley Heathman's Kill It, Clean It, Cook It, and Eat It book. And today's guest is Jane Milhans, and Jane is one of the volunteers for Operation Vote No 1639. It's a very draconian oppressive proposed law on the ballot in the state of Washington, and we talk about their efforts to resist that, about the law, and what you guys can do to help. So head over to outoforderjameskalita.com/102 and you'll find links to those websites that Jane mentions and links to our sponsors. And just a reminder, after today's episode, we'll be going to weekly episodes. So the next one we'll post on Monday, and that will be episode 103. And now, here's Jane.
Jane Milhans, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. So, Jane, you're a volunteer with Vote No on Initiative 1639. Would you tell us a little about that?
Yes, that is correct. I am a volunteer. The initiative... The reason why I'm volunteering, first of all, just to let you know, is I survived a home invasion, and so firearm protection is very important to me, and from that I became a firearm instructor, and every year I volunteer hundreds of hours teaching women how to use firearms for personal protection or sport. And so I go to the legislature as well and lobby for women's rights to be able to protect themselves as well as everybody's rights. It's everybody's right. But I think sometimes people feel, on the other side, people feel that it's just men who use firearms. And it's different for them when they hear from a woman's perspective. So a little bit about the initiative. Now, it's really important for people to understand that this initiative is happening in Washington state, but it's going to probably impact people all across the country. Washington is often a launching ground for liberal causes, and so they test them out in our state, and if they work, they send them around the country. So it started last year, actually, when in our state, the Democrats had control of the House and the Republicans had the Senate up until November of last year when the Democrats took over the Senate. And from that point on, the anti-gun groups were emboldened, and especially because our state attorney general and our governor, so State Attorney General Bob Ferguson and Governor Jay Inslee, and he may run for president, just to let you know, they came out in full force announcing immediately after the election that they were going to put through some strict gun legislation. And then when the legislature met at the beginning of the year, there were so many of our side that went down there. We got down there early in the morning to testify, gave my testimony. So the only thing that the anti-gun group got from the legislature was to ban bump stocks. And so they had the initiative all ready to go. And the initiative document itself violated the Washington State RCWs. It didn't have the correct wording on the back and so forth. They had a couple of weeks basically to get the signatures because when they put forth the initiative, it didn't, several groups challenged the way it was worded and the title of it. So the anti-gun groups, the Washington State one is funded a lot by Bloomberg, which you know that name. And then there are 3 billionaires out of Washington State who funded the bulk of the $4.3 million in their war chest. So that would be former Seahawks, well, he just passed away, Paul Allen, who owned the Seahawks and was one of the originators of Microsoft, and Nick Hanauer, who's a liberal activist in Seattle, and then Steve Ballmer, former CEO of Microsoft as well. So those 3 families, as well as Bloomberg, funded this thing along with a few others. So what they did is, through deceptive means, they hired out-of-state self-employed signature gatherers who came into Washington State. They paid them a lot of money. They paid them, these signature gatherers were earning over $1,000 a day getting signatures. And when people, they were primarily trying to hit the moms going into Walmart and so forth, and they would tell them, do you want to ban assault weapons? And the back of the initiative, as I mentioned, didn't have the correct wording on it. It's 30 pages, and you have to have the exact wording of the initiative on the back of what people are signing so they could see what they're signing. And you couldn't read it. And so anyways, and if you went up and questioned these people and asked them for their business license and anything, they would call the police and say you are harassing them. And so they very dishonest tactics to get the signatures. So they had enough signatures for the ballot, and the Secretary of State had to certify it because she does not have any authority to rule that it violated laws. So it was challenged in court again, and Judge Dixon out of Thurston County ruled that the initiative violated all of the RCW 29A, and he threw it out basically because it didn't follow any of the laws of the state of Washington. But then our state Supreme Court, which is why it's important when people vote for judges that they know who they're voting for, would not even hear an oral argument and without merit put it back on the ballot. So it was back on the ballot, and the initiative, there's a couple of websites if people want to look at actually what all is on the initiative. There's initiative1639.org, and there's also saveoursecurity.net are 2 websites that people can go in and look and see what this initiative is. And so the other side had more money than us, and so we launched a grassroots effort. We got a little bit of money from some various groups. You know, they were touting that the NRA is got all these millions of dollars, but they actually gave us, I think, less than $200,000 for, you know, things like signs, and they have a couple paid people and things like that. So they are helping, but it's predominantly a grassroots effort. So we have people all over the state, and we're communicating by social media and other means and doing things like phoning, doorbelling, putting up signs, speaking to groups, all kinds of things are going on, educating people to vote. A lot of gun owners don't vote for some reason. And so everybody, I see more people involved in this initiative than the one that passed a few years ago. So what's in this initiative? That's the scary part. So the initiative, like I said, is 30 pages. A lot of it's vague. I've read it several times. In fact, every time I go speak, I have it with me because the other side says that's not what the intention is, and I hold it up and show them that that's not what the initiative says. So it's pretty bad. So it starts off with saying that all semi-automatic rifles are assault weapons. So that's even like your Ruger 1022s that I used to teach 9-year-old Girl Scouts how to shoot. And it says on the front page that they're specifically designed to kill. So I was insulted by that, where they're labeling all of us as killers. And so all semi-automatic rifles will be labeled as assault weapons. Then they have a bunch of wording in it about, touchy-feely stuff, non-factual things. They want an enhanced background check in this initiative. So when you purchase a rifle, a semi-automatic rifle, going forward, if this were to pass, you have to wait 10 days, even if you have a concealed license for a pistol. And they are going to, and out-of-state people will no longer be able to buy rifles in the state of Washington. But they will check both federal and local, just like it's already done. And they're also going to check your medical records and to check to see whether there is anybody that decides that you should not own a firearm. So that's what they're considering enhanced. But it's still pretty vague. It's going to be a department set up by the state government, and it's going to either be law enforcement or the Department of Licensing. So they don't even know. They just put it in there as some, like I said, some vague writing so they can figure out what they're going to do. They're going to charge everybody $25 when you buy a semi-automatic rifle, and that is supposed to pay for this department that is going to regulate all of these things. They will also, with the background checks, they are going to do annual checks as well, and they're going to check those same things, federal, state. It's like a gun registration, and your medical records, and to see if somebody says you should not own a gun. So that will be done ongoing on an annual or more, it says, basis in here. And so, again, we don't know what that is. It's going to require a purchaser of a firearm, of a semi-automatic rifle, to show proof that you have completed firearm safety training. And the things inside the training that they want you to have is not being done anywhere right now. I'm a certified NRA instructor, and when I teach a certified NRA course and people get their certificate, right now those are recognized nationwide. But in this initiative, they specifically state that you have to teach firearms and suicide prevention. So not many firearm instructors are licensed to practice psychiatric or mental health issues. And so we do not know where this training is going to come from. They make it sound like groups like the NRA instructions will work because it'll say nationally recognized organizations, things like that. But again, we don't know, and specifically the NRA courses or any other firearm courses, we do not teach people about suicide because that is not what our expertise is. So that we don't know when that's going to happen or when or how that's going to be put into place. The initiative will also raise the age to purchase a rifle to 21. So it's going to deny the rights of people 18 to 20 to purchase a rifle. And I have a big concern about that because there are a lot of single women, single moms, and actually single people that really like that, to have a firearm for protection. One thing about the modern sporting rifle is you can get home defense ammunition for it, so it's much safer. The 30-06, 308s are a little more recoiled, if you get a bolt action or something like that for women, so they don't work as well. The young guys who want to go hunting are women. There's a lot of women that go hunting in the state too. So young people that want to go hunting will be denied that right to purchase a rifle for that. And one thing that's close to me is that when I teach as young as a 9-year-old Girl Scout how to shoot a rifle. A lot of those girls go on to be competition shooters, and they do quite well, actually. They do very well. I know several young girls that do very well. I know some young guys too. But when these young people turn 18, they would, before that, a lot of them compete for college scholarships. And there are college scholarships for shooting competition. And when they turn 18 and are going to be going off to college, they would like to own their competition rifle and take that with them. They will be denied that right as well. And mom and dad can't hand their rifle, just hand it over to somebody to safeguard for them, because that violates another initiative that passed in Washington State, 594, a few years ago. So it's going to be very disappointing for young adults age 18 to 20.
Wow.
So
it sounds like they're completely preventing folks from between the age of 18 and 20 to own firearms to hunt or compete with. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you have to be 21 in the state to buy a pistol, but they could buy a rifle, and yes, it discriminates against that young adult age. And the other side says their brains aren't fully developed. That's the excuse they use. But if you look at FBI statistics, for example, on homicides committed by rifles, there was one in the state last year. So there's more people killed by blunt objects, knives, and hands and fists than rifles. So the whole initiative is more about control. It's not about safety. And I'll get into a few of their other tactics too in a second. I've just touched halfway on this for you, just to get you some.
And
yeah.
It's interesting. It seems like they're changing. I say they. I mean, the gun control crowd is changing tactics, because normally they try to ban certain types of firearms, but here it sounds like they're just trying to make it so you're so discouraged from owning them that you don't want to. They haven't come out and said you can't have a semi-auto with a detachable magazine. They're just having you pay that extra tax and get the extra training.
Yeah. And wait the 10 days.
Wait the 10 days. Okay. Wow.
Right. And the 10 days bothers me, as a firearm instructor. What if I'm teaching a class this upcoming weekend and I need to purchase another rifle for the class? I'll be denied that right. It's hunting season. What if somebody is going hunting and something happens to their rifle, it breaks or something, and they need to buy a rifle at these events because of that 10-day waiting list? Or they're going to have it shipped to or sent to a place where they can pick it up. So it also will require mandatory storage, and it creates a new felony crime for firearm owners. So again, they're a little bit vague on this, but there's a pretty big section on gun storage, which the gun storage is a lot of people like to have their home defense firearms ready to go. And your front door, your home security system, all of that should be a deterrent. But it does require that firearms are locked up, and it does require that, now if they say there's a way out if your firearms are stolen, but you have 5 business days to report a loss, or 5 days, I mean, and but just like a tool in a toolbox. I know a lot of widows that I teach. They'll keep a firearm in a certain place and they won't look at it, and they may not. If they have somebody coming in to service something in their house, that's not something they look at every day. But they know it's there when they can grab it when they need it. My oldest student this year was 85 years old. She walks with a cane. There's no way she could jump up, go to a safe, and unlock it and get a firearm if somebody's beating in her front door. So the felony charges are a big concern to all of us. They're shifting the blame, or they're shifting the criminal focus onto the firearm owner as opposed to the criminal who breaks in your house. So in the safe storage, if any young person or prohibited person gets access to the firearm, it could be a felony conviction. And we just had a situation about a month ago, fairly close to me, where a 16-year-old girl was home alone and a guy barged in her door with a knife yelling, "I'm going to kill you." Now, this girl grabbed the family's home defense pistol. It was a 22, but not my choice, but it worked for her. So she grabbed the 22 and shot at the man, and he fled. So under 1639, that pistol would be required to be locked up because there's minors in the house. And so in a different scenario, she could be stabbed to death, or her parents could be felons because she had access to a firearm. Like I say, a lot of the wording is pretty ambiguous, so if you're in Seattle, which is King County, the prosecutor there will probably go for the maximum penalty against you versus, say, in a more conservative county in eastern Washington. The other thing on safe storage, it doesn't really say what safe storage is. And so a lot of us who conceal carry are concerned that when we're going into a no-gun zone building and we have to leave our firearm in our car, that if it's stolen out of there, that car is not considered safe storage. So, there may be felony penalties for that as well. So the storage issue is a very big concern. People, there are a lot of permit holders in Washington State who do own firearms for personal protection. Washington State ranks number 11th in the nation for permit holders. So there's a lot of people that do own firearms in Washington State and want to protect ourselves. Our laws have been very supportive of the Second Amendment up until these recent attacks. We have not, like when you purchase a firearm, you don't have to have training or a psychiatric exam or anything like that. When you get a concealed permit, it's your Second Amendment right, so they do the background checks and you get issued a concealed permit. But this is slowly going away and starting off with this horrible initiative. The initiative also, they cross off some preemptive wording in this initiative, which has a concern for people. So right now in the state of Washington, every gun law is legislated from the legislature. It's created from the legislature. So every county, city, and jurisdiction has the same laws, and from one area to the next what the laws are. But because of this initiative, like Seattle has put through safe storage laws and violated the preemptive laws of the state of Washington, and when they've been challenged in court, the judges throw them out because the judges in the state, a lot of them are appointed by the governor. So there's no respect to the law in the state for gun rights. So this initiative is also going to create a gun registration, and so the Department of Licensing, as I mentioned, or a legal law enforcement group will be collecting and storing information on all gun owners. There won't be any limits on how the information is going to be used. And since you will be waiving your HIPAA medical privacy rights for life, that information is stored with this. And also, if there is anybody who feels you should not own a firearm, that information will go along with this as well. So they have directed that this organization, this entity who's going to do the annual checks, will verify once or more a year for both handguns and semi-automatic rifles. And they're going to verify if they feel the owner is eligible to possess a firearm under the laws. So the initiative will authorize law enforcement to take steps to remove the firearms from the person if they are deemed no longer eligible to own the firearms. So this initiative, all of these things are being advertised by anti-gun groups as safe schools and safe communities, but not one thing in this initiative addresses any safety in a school. I've been bringing this up everywhere I go, and they don't have an answer for me. But more students die every year from suicide due to hanging, strangulation, and asphyxiation, and you can look those up on the pediatric websites. But kids are committing suicide because they're bullied. And so nothing in this initiative addresses making that or changing that the biggest cause of death of students in schools. And they're committing suicide as young as 6 years old as well.
Oh, geez. Wow.
Yeah, and the other thing about this initiative that I bring up to the anti-gun group is that historically more kids have died in schools from fires. But after safety equipment was installed for fire systems and sprinklers, not one child has lost their life. And this initiative doesn't do anything to make a school facility safe. They don't request guards. They don't want safety doors. There's a whole list of things you can do to make the building safe. But it's easier to walk into a school than it is many businesses and libraries, whatever. There's nothing to secure the building. No training for teachers that want to conceal carry, guards, nothing. And I will say that the three billionaires, what's kind of ironic, I Google mapped Paul Allen's house on Mercer Island, and there is an armed guard standing outside his property in one of the pictures. And yet he wanted the residents of this state to be unarmed. So that's, I don't understand why they want to make us unarmed. And other than maybe it's a control thing for them, I don't know.
It certainly seems like it. And you mentioned a few times where someone can report that they don't think you should have a gun. Are they leaving that open to anyone? So criminals could report their intended victims as being ineligible to own firearms and then have their guns taken away? And
that is a possibility because it doesn't specify that it has to be a relative. So it is already happening in Seattle, and you can find things. I'll try to find a story for you, and I could email it to you. But there's a guy, I saw a video story of a guy in Seattle who his neighbors said he should not own firearms, and he had 7 of them. And law enforcement came in and confiscated those, and they're holding them for 13 months, I guess, is what the story said. And they're going to have another trial in 13 months to decide whether he should own those guns still or not. So in that case, you're guilty until proven innocent. So we're seeing more of the reverse of the laws, where we should be innocent until proven guilty. But with guns like this, it seems to be what the left is trying to change the laws to be.
Yeah, certainly does. Well, I thank you so much for coming on the show, and I'll post links. You said it was 1639.org and saveoursecurity.org?
Initiative 1639.org and saveoursecurity.net have a lot of really good information, and you can even see a copy of the 30-page initiative. But again, as a warning to other states, that this is going to go around the country. So Washington, they're testing it here. They're testing the tactics. So the dishonest advertising, the dishonest way they got the signatures, the violations of the laws to put this on the ballot. And a lot of us feel helpless because if it does pass, we'll challenge it in court, of course, but with having judges that throw out cases regarding firearms, so we just don't know how this is going to end up. But its whole intent is to criminalize law-abiding gun owners, because when you think about it, making the charge a felony that strips you of your rights to own firearms, and it also strips you from your rights to vote.
Yeah.
That's the other problem with this.
Yep, and my friends in New Jersey have been living with that for years, and very sad to see that starting to spread. But I will make sure I let everyone know, and I thank you very much for being on the show. I look forward to talking to you again
Yeah, well,
soon.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'll be happy anytime if you, even later on, we'll see what happens after the election. If I need to do a follow-up later on, I'll be happy to do that too.
Thanks again for tuning in to episode 103 of the Out of Order Gun Rights podcast. Show notes page for today's episode is outoforderjameskalita.com/103. And please head over to the show notes page and check out the links from our sponsors. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next Monday for episode 103.